Not louder, not darker, just quieter in a way that feels intentional, as though the ancient stones have decided to hold their breath, listening to something far older than footsteps or voices. This is one of those nights. High above the grounds, the towers of Hogwarts stand beneath a sky scattered with stars, their light faintly reflected in the calm surface of the Black Lake. The air is cool but gentle, carrying the soft scent of stone and candle smoke. Windows glow warmly, not bright enough to wake, but steady enough to comfort. Inside the castle, the great hall is empty now. Long tables rest in silence beneath the enchanted ceiling, which mirrors the night sky so perfectly it feels as though the stars have drifted indoors. Along the walls, the great house banners hang in their usual places: Gryffindor red, Slytherin green, Ravenclaw blue, Hufflepuff gold. Except tonight, they do not move. Normally, there is always a subtle motion to them, a faint ripple, a quiet flutter, responding to drafts no one ever feels. But tonight, the banners are perfectly still, as though time itself has paused just long enough to notice. No one announces this change. No bell rings. No spell is cast. It simply is. Elsewhere in the castle, lanterns glow softly along corridors, their light stretching lazily across stone floors. The staircases have settled into place, content not to rearrange themselves for once. Portraits whisper good nights and turn inward, already drifting toward sleep. This story begins not with urgency, but with stillness. It begins with Hogwarts listening. If you imagine yourself here now, walking slowly through the castle, there is no rush to be anywhere. Your steps are unhurried, the echoes fade quickly, as if the castle is cushioning every sound. You are safe, you are welcome, and nothing is expected of you tonight. As you settle in, you might notice how the quiet feels different from silence. It is warm, observant, almost kind. In a moment, we will follow a small group of familiar students as they notice what others do not, that something ancient and gentle is unfolding within the walls of Hogwarts. Not a danger, not a challenge, but a question the castle has been waiting a long time to ask. So let your breathing slow, let your shoulders soften. If you enjoy these sleepy journeys through the wizarding world, you are always welcome to like the story, subscribe for more calming Hogwarts tales, and return whenever you need a place to rest your thoughts. For now, simply listen. The banners are still, the castle is awake, and the night is just beginning. It was the way the air felt as he walked through the corridor outside the Gryffindor common room, thicker somehow, yet gentle, like a held breath. Hogwarts often felt alive at night, full of quiet motion and whispered magic, but tonight there was a softness to it that made Harry slow his steps without knowing why. Hermione Granger walked beside him, her book tucked under her arm rather than open in front of her. That alone was unusual. She had chosen to walk without reading, allowing her eyes to trace the stone arches and torchlight instead. Hermione had learned over the years that Hogwarts revealed some of its truths only when she stopped trying to analyze them. Ron Weasley trailed slightly behind, hands buried in his sleeves, His expression relaxed in a way it rarely was during the day. He wasn't tired exactly, just comfortably quiet, as though the castle had decided to give him permission to stop worrying for a while. "You feel that?" Ron asked softly, breaking the silence. Harry nodded. "Yeah, like the castle's waiting." Hermione smiled faintly. "Or listening." They moved together without hurry, following a path they had walked 100 times before, yet tonight it felt newly unfamiliar, not threatening, just changed. Harry had always felt closely tied to Hogwarts. From the moment he first arrived, the castle had been more than a school to him. It had been shelter, guide, and sometimes protector. He trusted it in a way that didn't require explanation. When something shifted within its walls, he felt it instinctively. Hermione loved Hogwarts for different reasons. She loved its history, its layers, the way knowledge lingered in the stone itself. To her, the castle was a vast library written in architecture and magic, each corridor holding echoes of learning and growth. Stillness, she understood, could be as meaningful as movement. Ron loved Hogwarts because it was home in a way few other places ever had been. It fed him well, warmed him in winter, and surrounded him with people who laughed loudly and loved fiercely. When the castle grew quiet, Ron felt it not as absence, but as comfort. They entered the great hall together. The room was empty now, long tables resting beneath the enchanted ceiling where stars shimmered faintly. Candlelight glowed softly along the walls, illuminating the house banners hanging high above. That was when Hermione stopped walking. The banners were perfectly still, no flutter, no gentle sway. They hung as though painted into place, colors deep and calm. "That's not normal," Ron whispered, though his voice carried no fear. Harry felt a strange warmth spread through his chest. "It's not wrong either." Hermione nodded slowly. "Whatever this is, it feels intentional." They stood together beneath the unmoving banners, three friends shaped by the castle in different ways, yet united by the same quiet curiosity. None of them felt the need to rush closer or cast a spell. They simply watched, and Hogwarts, ancient and attentive, watched them in return. For a long moment, the three of them simply stood beneath the house banners, as though they had wandered into a painting that had paused itself mid-brushstroke. The great hall felt larger at night, not because it changed size, but because silence gave it space to breathe. The long tables were bare, the benches neatly tucked in, and the floating candles hung above like warm stars, steady and patient. Usually there was always movement somewhere, tiny ripples along fabric, a draft that stirred a flame, a faint rustle as if the castle couldn't help but remind everyone it was alive. But tonight, the banners did not move at all. Harry's eyes drifted upward toward Gryffindor's scarlet and gold. The lion seemed almost more awake, without the soft sway of fabric, its stitched features crisp, unchanging. To the side, Slytherin's green banner hung perfectly straight, the serpent poised in smooth stillness. Ravenclaw's eagle and Hufflepuff's badger, too, were held in the same calm suspension. Hermione stepped forward first, her movements careful and slow, as if she didn't want to startle the air. She tilted her head, observing the banners the way she might study an unusual magical artifact, except without reaching for her wand. "Do you feel it?" she asked softly. Ron rubbed the back of his neck. "I feel like I should be whispering," he said, voice low, "like the halls, sleeping." Harry nodded. The stillness wasn't frightening. It was intimate, like the moment just before a lullaby begins, when the room turns gentle and everything seems to listen. Hermione's gaze moved to the nearest torch along the wall. The flame flickered, but only once, as though it had remembered to move. "That's odd," she murmured. "The fire is behaving normally. Then why aren't the banners?" Ron asked. Harry didn't answer immediately. He was watching the space between the banners and the ceiling, where the enchanted night sky stretched endlessly. The stars above moved slowly, drifting the way they always did. And yet, Harry had the strange impression that the ceiling's magic was quieter tonight too, less shimmering, less alive with illusion, not fading, just resting. He looked down, noticing something he hadn't noticed at first. The great hall's floor, usually polished and reflective in places, looked softer, not physically softer, but visually, as though the shine had been muted. Even the shadows looked calmer, less sharp at their edges. Hermione noticed Harry's expression. "What is it?" "The whole room," Harry whispered. "It's not just the banners." Ron shifted his weight, glancing around as if the hall might answer him. "Maybe someone cast a spell." Hermione shook her head gently. "Not like this. There's no disturbance, no residue. It doesn't feel like a charm placed on top of everything." She paused, listening with her whole body. "It feels like the castle itself is doing it." As soon as she said those words, something changed. Not loudly, not suddenly, but unmistakably. A hush rolled through the hall like a soft wave, beginning near the staff table and moving outward. The floating candles dimmed by the smallest amount, not enough to darken the room, only enough to make the light feel warmer and deeper. The torch flames steadied, their flicker slowing until each one held a perfectly calm, unwavering glow. And then the banners did something more unsettling than moving. They went quiet in a different way. The stitched animals, lion, serpent, eagle, badger, seemed to soften at their edges, not blurring, but becoming less defined, as though the banners were slipping into a kind of sleep. Hermione's breath caught. "They're fading," Ron offered, eyes wide. Harry didn't think it was fading. It looked more like the banners were withdrawing, like someone closing their eyes. And then, from somewhere high above, a sound drifted down. Not a voice, not a whisper, a note. One long, clear, gentle note, like the first tone of a tuning fork, but warmer, almost like the castle itself had hummed. The sound did not echo sharply. It settled into the hall and held there, soft and steady, wrapping itself around the stone and the air. Harry felt it in his chest more than in his ears. Ron's shoulders lowered, as though the sound had reminded him to breathe. Hermione's face softened, her expression turning thoughtful instead of alarmed. The note faded after a few seconds, leaving behind a deep quiet that felt charged, but peacefully so. "What was that?" Ron whispered. Hermione didn't answer immediately. She stepped closer to the Gryffindor banner, tilting her head as though she could see a thread of magic hanging in the air. "It's not calling," she said slowly. "It's attuning." Harry's eyes flicked to the Slytherin banner. For a split second, he thought he saw movement, just the tiniest ripple like a breath. Then it stopped again. He took a step forward, and the moment his foot crossed an invisible line in the air, some boundary of the hall's magic, he felt it, a gentle pressure like warm water pushing softly against his skin. Not resisting, not trapping, guiding, Harry paused. The pressure eased. He stepped forward again, slower this time, and the pressure returned, nudging, not his body, but his attention, towards the very center of the great hall, where the 4 house tables formed a wide open space. Hermione noticed too. She moved beside him, and her eyes widened slightly in recognition. "It's directing us," she whispered. Ron hesitated, then followed, his footsteps careful. "Right. Brilliant. The hall's giving directions now." They reached the center and stopped. The air there felt different, warmer, softer, as though the hall had gathered its calm into one place. And then the first true twist revealed itself. The banners, still hanging high above, began to lean inward, not physically bending, but in presence, like their magic was turning toward the center. The colors deepened, the house crests became clearer again, but now they held a strange quality, as though they were not just symbols anymore. They felt like living memories. Harry blinked slowly, and as he did, a thought drifted into his mind, quiet, gentle, not quite words. "Remember," he turned to Hermione. "Did you?" "Yes," she whispered, eyes wide. "I felt it too." Ron swallowed. "I didn't hear words. I just got this feeling like when Mum tells you to stop arguing and you don't even know why you listen. You just do." Hermione's mouth twitched with a faint smile. "That's close enough." The air shimmered once, like a breath. Then, above them, the enchanted ceiling changed. The stars did not vanish, but they drew together slowly, as though a hand were gently sweeping them across a canvas. Clouds of light shifted, reorganizing, until the night sky formed a shape, a circle, a wide, faintly glowing circle, suspended above the center of the hall. Harry looked up, mesmerized. The circle was not bright. It was the kind of glow that seemed to exist mostly in the edges of your vision, like moonlight on snow. Within the circle, something appeared, not an image exactly, a pattern, 4 lines, each one made of tiny points of light. They stretched outward like compass directions, forming a quiet symbol that reminded Harry of the 4 houses, not in rivalry, but in balance. Hermione's voice was breath-thin. "It's like the ceiling is showing us an arrangement spell." Ron frowned. "Arrangement spell?" Hermione nodded slowly. "There are spells that align objects, arrange them, harmonize them." She looked up, eyes shining. "But Hogwarts isn't arranging furniture, it's arranging itself." As she spoke, the banners shifted again, not waving, but tightening, their fabric becoming perfectly smooth. The crests looked almost newly stitched. The colors glowed subtly, not flashy, just alive. Then the circle in the ceiling pulsed once, and the great hall changed in a way Harry had never seen. The tables did not vanish, the candles did not scatter. Instead, the sound of the hall softened further, as though someone had placed a silencing charm over the space. Harry could still hear his own breathing, the faint crackle of a torch, the distant creak of the castle, but the great hall's usual sense of vastness, its echo and openness, folded inward gently, creating a feeling of closeness, like the room was becoming a small, safe pocket inside the larger castle. Harry felt his heart steady. No panic, no rush, just calm curiosity, like the beginning of a story you know will be kind. Hermione held her book tighter against her chest. "It's not doing this for show," she said. "It's preparing." "For what?" Ron whispered. Before Harry could answer, the banners went still again, completely, utterly still, but this time the stillness was different. It didn't feel like sleep. It felt like attention. All four banners, all four house crests, all four colors were looking inward, listening. Then, beneath the soft glow of the circle in the ceiling, a new sound rose. Not the humming note this time, a faint rustle, like cloth moving far away. Harry turned slowly, following the sound toward the far end of the hall. There, near the doors, one banner had shifted, not a house banner, a smaller banner, hanging nearer to the entrance, one Harry barely remembered being there. It was plain, cream-colored, with no crest, no writing. Harry stared. Was that always there? Hermione's face tightened in thought. "I don't know," Ron blinked. "How do we not know? We've eaten here for years." The small banner stirred once, just the tiniest flutter, then went still again. And in that stillness, Harry felt it, the same gentle pressure as before, guiding their attention. Toward the plain banner, Hermione took a slow step in its direction, and the circle in the ceiling dimmed slightly, as if approving their choice. They walked together, unhurried. The closer they got, the warmer the air became. Not hot, just comforting, like stepping near a hearth. The plain banner did not move, but Harry felt something behind it, like a door behind a curtain. Hermione reached out, hesitated, then stopped short of touching it. She looked at Harry. "This feels older." Ron's voice was soft, almost reverent. "Older than the house banners?" Hermione nodded, like it was here before the rivalry, before points, before competitions. She swallowed, before the houses became separate. Harry's chest tightened, not with fear, but with the quiet weight of meaning. He looked back at the four house banners, still and attentive, and for the first time, he understood the twist not as a mystery, but as a message. Tonight, the banners weren't still because something had gone wrong. They were still because the castle was asking for peace, not between students, not even between houses, but within itself. The plain banner waited, silent and steady, like a forgotten center, and the great hall, wrapped in calm, seemed to whisper without words. "Come closer. Remember what you were meant to be." They did not touch the plain banner right away. Something about it asked for patience. Harry stood closest, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from the fabric, yet he kept his hands at his sides. The banner did not ripple or glow. It simply hung there, cream-colored and unmarked, its stillness deeper than that of the house banners was behind them. The great hall remained hushed, as though the castle itself was holding space for whatever came next. Hermione broke the silence first, her voice barely more than breath. This doesn't feel like something that reacts to touch. Ron nodded slowly. Feels more like something that reacts to being noticed. Harry felt a soft agreement ripple through him. The castle had never responded well to force. It answered attention, presence, respect. He stepped back half a pace, and the moment he did, the air changed. Not abruptly. Nothing at Hogwarts ever truly changed abruptly when it mattered, but with the sensation of a long-held tension easing. The warmth around the banner spread outward, washing gently over the stone floor, creeping toward the tables, the walls, the high ceiling above. The 4 house banners responded, not by moving, but by breathing. Harry watched, entranced, as the fabric of Gryffindor's banner relaxed at its edges, the red deepening into a softer hue. Slytherin's green lost its sharp gleam, becoming richer and more organic. Ravenclaw's blue darkened into a calm twilight shade, and Hufflepuff's gold glowed with the warmth of lamplight rather than brightness. Hermione pressed a hand to her chest. They're not competing anymore. Ron frowned slightly. They were competing? Always, Hermione said gently. Not just the students, the magic too. Harry turned back to the plain banner. As if acknowledging their understanding, the banner shifted, not fluttering, not waving, but loosening, like fabric settling after being hung for centuries. Then something appeared upon it. At first, it was so faint, Harry wondered if his eyes were imagining it. A line, thin, pale, barely visible, emerged near the center of the cloth. It did not glow, it did not shine, it simply existed. Then another line, then another. Slowly, the lines formed a shape, not a crest, not a symbol of power, a circle. Within it, 4 smaller markings appeared, simple impressions rather than detailed icons. They suggested a lion, a serpent, an eagle, and a badger, but only barely, as though the idea of each house existed here without the need for full identity. Hermione's eyes widened with understanding. This isn't a banner for a house, she whispered. It's a banner for the castle. Ron swallowed. You're saying Hogwarts had its own banner? Before the houses, Hermione said. Before divisions. Before points and rivalries and competitions. She exhaled slowly. When Hogwarts was just Hogwarts, Harry felt something settle inside him. A memory that wasn't his, yet felt familiar. A hall filled not with 4 tables, but with 1, students seated together. Voices raised not in competition, but in conversation. Magic woven not to separate, but to support. The images did not overwhelm him. They drifted through his thoughts like passing clouds, leaving behind only warmth. The plain banner did not brighten. Instead, it deepened. The cloth seemed thicker now, older, as though it carried the weight of centuries without strain. The markings grew clearer, not sharper, but more present. Then the second twist revealed itself. The enchanted ceiling above the great hall shifted again. The circular pattern of stars did not dissolve. Instead, it slowly expanded, stretching outward until it touched the edges of the ceiling. The stars rearranged themselves, flowing into long arcs that mirrored the architecture of the hall below. Harry noticed something strange. The ceiling was no longer showing the night sky. It was showing the castle, not from outside, from within. Stone arches, corridors, staircases, rooms layered atop rooms, glowing faintly as though seen through layers of memory rather than stone. The image was calm, unmoving, like a map drawn by someone who knew every corner intimately. Hermione gasped softly. "It's a reflection." Ron stared upward. "That's unsettling." Harry shook his head. "It's not showing where things are." Hermione turned to him. "Then what is it showing?" He took a moment before answering. "Where things belong." As if in response, one of the glowing corridors in the ceiling dimmed slightly. Another brightened. A staircase softened at its edges, while a tower pulsed gently. Nothing moved quickly. Everything adjusted as though guided by careful thought. The great hall itself seemed to hum, not audibly, but with presence. Hermione felt it too. "The castle is realigning." Ron frowned. "Realigning what?" "Balance," Hermione said. "Memory, rest." She hesitated. "Identity." Harry looked again at the house banners. They were still, but now they felt anchored rather than frozen, as though they had found a place to settle without needing to assert themselves. The plain banner, Hogwarts' banner, responded by doing something unexpected. It lowered, not falling, not dropping, but gently descending until it hovered just above the floor, close enough that Harry could feel its warmth on his face. No rope moved, no mechanism revealed itself. The banner simply chose to come closer. Ron instinctively stepped back, then stopped himself. "It's not dangerous," he said, more to reassure himself than anyone else. Harry felt the same gentle pressure he had felt earlier, the guiding warmth, but this time it was broader, less directional. It wasn't telling them where to go, it was asking them to stay. Hermione knelt slowly, bringing herself level with the banner. She did not touch it. She simply met it at eye level, her expression calm and open. "What do you need?" she whispered. The banner did not answer in words. Instead, the image on the cloth softened again, the circle expanding slightly, the four markings within it drifting closer together until they almost overlapped. Not merging, not erasing their differences, just coexisting. Harry felt the meaning settle into him, like understanding rather than information. "This isn't about changing the houses," he said softly. Hermione looked up at him. "It's about reminding them." Ron tilted his head. "Of what?" Harry searched for the simplest truth, that they belonged to something bigger. The castle seemed to approve. The ceiling image shifted again, this time focusing inward, toward the great hall itself. The tables glowed faintly, not individually, but as one continuous presence. The stone walls pulsed once, warmly, like a heartbeat. The house banners stirred, not moving, not waving, but acknowledging. For the first time that night, Harry sensed something like relief in the castle's magic, as though Hogwarts had been holding tension for years, centuries, without complaint, waiting patiently for the right moment to loosen its grip. Hermione rose slowly, brushing dust from her knees, though none clung to her. "This isn't a spell someone cast," she said. It's a cycle completing itself. Ron crossed his arms loosely. So, what happens now? The plain banner hovered a moment longer. Then, just as gently as it had descended, it began to rise. The image on the cloth faded, not vanishing, but settling into the fabric as though absorbed into the weave. The warmth receded slightly, leaving behind a comforting echo. The banner returned to its place near the hall's entrance, blending back into the background, not hidden, but no longer demanding attention. The enchanted ceiling softened, the internal map of the castle dissolving back into a calm night sky. Stars resumed their slow drift. The house banners did not resume their usual flutter. Instead, they hung with a new kind of ease. Balanced, the great hall exhaled. Harry felt it in his chest, a quiet release he hadn't known he needed. Hermione let out a slow breath. That was kind. Ron nodded, eyes still on the banners. Yeah, Hogwarts doesn't shout, does it? Harry smiled faintly. It never has. They stood together for a while longer, letting the hall return to its familiar shape and sound. Candles brightened just slightly. Torches resumed a gentle flicker. The moment had passed, but the understanding remained. Tonight, the banners had gone still, not because something was wrong. They had gone still because the castle was remembering itself, and in doing so, it had invited those within its walls to remember too, quietly, gently, without ever needing to be told. After that night, Hogwarts did not return immediately to what anyone might have called normal. Outwardly, everything looked the same. Classes continued. The staircases shifted again, though more lazily than before. Portraits resumed their gossip, and the great hall filled with noise at mealtimes. The banners, too, began to move once more, just a little. A soft ripple here, a gentle sway there. Yet something subtle had changed, and those sensitive to the castle's moods could feel it. Harry felt it most clearly in the spaces between moments. When he walked alone through corridors late in the evening, the castle seemed to pause with him, as if matching his pace. The stone under his feet felt warmer, more familiar. He noticed how often Hogwarts chose not to redirect him, how staircases lingered just long enough to let him pass without confusion. Hermione felt it in the library. Books that once seemed stubbornly obscure opened more easily to the right pages, not because answers leapt out at her, but because the noise around the answers had softened. She found herself lingering longer over passages that spoke of unity, balance, and early magical theory, texts written long before the house system had become the heart of Hogwarts life. Ron felt it in the common room. The usual undercurrent of rivalry, so quiet it was almost invisible, felt less sharp. Arguments fizzled out more quickly. Laughter lingered longer. Even the fire seemed steadier, its warmth spreading evenly rather than flaring. None of them spoke about it much. The castle had taught them that naming something too directly could sometimes pin it down when it wanted to breathe. Still, the gentle suspense remained, not the kind that tightened the chest or quickened the pulse, but the kind that hovered just beyond awareness, like the sense that something was still unfolding, slowly, in its own time. One evening, Hermione noticed something unusual during dinner. She glanced up at the Ravenclaw banner, expecting to see it shifting lazily in the warm air. Instead, she saw the faintest hesitation, a moment where the fabric seemed to hold itself still before moving again. She didn't mention it. Later that night, Ron heard a sound in the corridor outside the Gryffindor tower. Not footsteps, not voices, a settling like fabric folding itself neatly after being shaken out. He paused, listening, then went back to bed without alarm. Harry, meanwhile, began to dream differently. The dreams were not visions. They did not show him events or warnings or memories that didn't belong to him. Instead, he dreamed of walking through the castle as it once was, quiet halls lit by fewer torches, students gathered together without division, magic woven into the walls like a shared heartbeat. When he woke, the feeling remained calm and reassuring, like waking from a dream that had not needed to be remembered in detail. The suspense grew not through events, but through absence. The banners no longer competed for attention. At Quidditch practice, Harry noticed something else. The house banners around the pitch still waved proudly, but their movements felt less aggressive, less urgent. Even the cheers from the stands carried a warmer tone, supportive rather than sharp. Madame Hooch raised an eyebrow at the unusually civil behavior, but said nothing. The castle, it seemed, was encouraging patience. One afternoon, Hermione found herself in an unused classroom, sitting quietly with her notes spread around her. She hadn't chosen the room for any particular reason. It had simply felt right. As she worked, she became aware of the walls, not moving, listening. She paused, quill hovering above parchment. "All right," she whispered, not feeling foolish at all. "I'm paying attention." The room responded by growing warmer, the light softening. Her thoughts slowed, aligning themselves more gently. She wrote not faster, but more clearly. The suspense was never about what might go wrong. It was about whether they would notice what was going right. Harry and Ron joined her later, drawn by that same quiet pull. "This place feels settled," Ron said, glancing around. Hermione nodded. "It's like the castle is redistributing its energy." Ron blinked. "You mean it's reorganizing itself?" "Not physically," Harry said. "Emotionally." They sat together in silence, the kind that doesn't beg to be filled. Outside, the wind brushed against the windows without insistence. As days passed, Hogwarts began to reveal its next subtle shift. It came during breakfast. The great hall was loud, full of clattering dishes and conversation. Yet for a brief moment, so brief that most students missed it entirely, the sound softened. Not stopped. Softened, Harry noticed, because his spoon paused halfway to his mouth. Hermione noticed, because her thoughts suddenly felt too quiet. Ron noticed, because his toast slipped from his fingers without him realizing it. They looked up at the same time. The house banners were moving, but not independently. They swayed together, slowly, as if caught in the same gentle current. Red, green, blue, and gold moving not in competition, but in rhythm. The moment passed quickly. Conversation resumed. Laughter rose again, but the suspense deepened. That afternoon, the castle offered another gentle test. A group of first-year students argued in the corridor outside the charms classroom. Nothing serious, just raised voices and crossed arms. Normally, such a moment would linger, sharpening into resentment. Instead, the corridor itself seemed to intervene. The torches dimmed slightly, the echo softened, the walls closed in just enough to encourage closeness rather than division. The argument dissolved into awkward silence. One of the students laughed, embarrassed. They moved on. Harry watched from a distance, heart steady. "Did you see that?" Hermione nodded slowly. "The castle is guiding behavior." Ron tilted his head. "That's unsettling." "It's gentle," Hermione corrected, "and optional." The suspense was in the waiting. Would Hogwarts push further, or would it stop here? The answer came not through spectacle, but through restraint. The banners did not go still again, not fully. They did not reveal new symbols or summon ancient magic. Instead, they continued their quiet adjustment, responding to the castle's deeper rhythm. Harry sensed that this was intentional. The castle was not trying to erase differences. It was teaching coexistence. One evening, Harry found himself alone in the great hall again, long after dinner had ended. The candles floated low, their light warm and steady. He looked up at the banners, each one gently moving in its place. He felt no urge to step closer this time. The suspense resolved itself, not in action, but in understanding. The banners had gone still once because the castle needed to remember itself. Now, they moved again because the castle was ready to continue, balanced, whole. Harry smiled softly, feeling the tension he hadn't known he carried finally ease. Whatever Hogwarts had begun that night was not something that needed to finish quickly. It would unfold slowly, patiently, in the background of everyday life. And that, Harry realized, was exactly how the most important magic always worked. It never had. Instead, Hogwarts offered pathways the way a quiet forest offers trails, by letting the curious notice where the ground felt slightly smoother, where the air seemed a little warmer, where silence gathered not as absence, but as welcome. Harry noticed it first during an evening walk meant for nothing more than clearing his thoughts. He had taken the long way back to the common room, letting the corridors decide his direction. The staircases behaved themselves, shifting lazily, almost thoughtfully, as if considering where he might like to go rather than where they usually sent students. At one junction, Harry slowed. To his left lay the familiar route, busy, well lit, echoing faintly with distant voices. To his right, a narrower corridor curved away, quieter than the rest. Not forbidden, not hidden, just overlooked. Harry stood there, weighing nothing more serious than instinct. "I'll take the quiet," he murmured, and turned right. The corridor welcomed him without ceremony. The stone beneath his feet felt smoother, worn by centuries of passing that had somehow forgotten to leave noise behind. Portraits here were fewer and older, their frames darkened with age. Most of them slept, breathing softly in painted dreams. Harry walked slowly, not because he feared getting lost, but because the space encouraged unhurried movement. At the corridor's end, he found a window overlooking the grounds. Moonlight pooled on the floor, silver and calm. He leaned against the stone and simply stood there, feeling the castle settle around him. Later, when he told Hermione and Ron about it, he didn't dress the story up. "It felt like Hogwarts wanted me there," he said simply. Hermione's eyes lit with quiet interest. "Then we should explore," she said. Carefully. Ron hesitated. "You mean like choose where we go instead of letting the castle shove us around?" "Exactly," Hermione replied. "Choice matters more when something is listening." They didn't bring maps. They didn't bring spells meant for defense or detection. Instead, they brought curiosity and time. Their exploration began the next evening, after the corridors had grown drowsy and the castle's daytime bustle had softened into something more intimate. They let their steps wander when a staircase shifted away. They didn't chase it. When a door stood slightly ajar, they paused, listened, and decided whether to enter. Each choice felt small, but meaningful. In one quiet alcove, Ron stopped abruptly. "What?" Harry asked. Ron frowned, then shrugged. "Thought I heard something, but not bad." Hermione tilted her head, listening. The sound was faint, a gentle hum, like distant voices agreeing on a melody. "I think it's the walls," she said. Ron blinked. "The walls are humming?" "Yes," Hermione said calmly. "They've always carried magic. We're just noticing it now." They stayed there for a while, leaning against stone, warmed by centuries of enchantment. No revelations arrived. No doors opened dramatically. And yet, when they left, each of them felt slightly steadier, as if the castle had acknowledged their presence with approval. The most important choice came later that week. It found Hermione alone. She stood at the entrance to a narrow staircase, spiraling downward, not toward danger, not toward secrecy, but toward uncertainty. The steps were clean, well maintained, clearly not abandoned, yet no sign pointed to where they led. Hermione placed her hand on the banister. She could turn back. There was no obligation to explore every corner simply because it existed. She closed her eyes, took a breath, and listened, not for instructions, but for alignment. The staircase felt neutral, open. Hermione smiled faintly and began her descent. The space below opened into a small circular room lined with shelves. Not a library, not a classroom, a place for pause. Cushioned chairs, a low table, a single enchanted lantern casting steady light. Hermione sat. No books leapt from shelves. No voices whispered secrets. Instead, she felt something shift within herself, an understanding that knowledge didn't always demand pursuit. Sometimes it waited to be met halfway. When she returned to the common room later, Ron looked up from a game of wizard chess. "You look different." Hermione considered that. "I think I chose not to push." Harry nodded slowly. "That counts." Their explorations became less about movement and more about intention. Ron chose to revisit the kitchens, not to snack, but to sit quietly with the house elves, listening to their stories without expectation. He learned that attention itself could be a gift. Harry chose high places, towers, bridges, windows that looked out over the grounds. He learned how perspective softened old worries. Hermione chose spaces meant for rest, unused classrooms, forgotten reading nooks, stair landings bathed in morning light. She learned that pauses could be productive. The castle responded to each choice differently. Corridors brightened or dimmed. Doors creaked open more easily. The air itself seemed to adjust, accommodating rather than directing. They never spoke of a goal. There wasn't one. What mattered was that Hogwarts was no longer something happening to them. It was something happening with them. One evening, standing together beneath the house banners, they felt it again, the shared rhythm, steady and calm. Harry didn't reach for the banners this time. Neither did Hermione. Ron just smiled. They had learned the most important lesson the castle could offer. Magic, when treated gently, always met you halfway, and Hogwarts, ancient and patient, had been waiting for them to choose that understanding all along. The revelation did not arrive like a thunderclap. It came the way sleep does, softly, gradually, after the body has already begun to rest. The night the truth revealed itself was quieter than most. The corridors were nearly empty, the castle wrapped in that gentle stillness that settled only when everyone who needed to sleep already had. Even the staircases moved less, as if they, too, were listening. Harry, Hermione, and Ron stood beneath the great hall's vaulted ceiling, where the four house banners usually swayed with slow, dignified motion. Tonight, they hung almost completely still, not stiff, not frozen, just resting. Harry felt it first, a sense that something familiar had changed its posture rather than its nature. "They're not wrong," he whispered. "They're just quiet." Hermione nodded, her eyes thoughtful, like the castle is holding its breath. Ron shifted his weight, hands in his pockets, or like it finally decided it doesn't need to shout to be heard. They didn't know why they had gathered here. No map had led them, no voice had called them by name. They had simply felt drawn, each arriving from different corridors at nearly the same moment, as if Hogwarts had aligned their paths gently and without effort. They stood together in the vast space, their footsteps echoing softly against the stone. That was when the insight began to take shape, not as words, but as understanding. Hermione spoke first, her voice barely above a breath. "The banners aren't just symbols." Ron raised an eyebrow. "They're not watching us, are they?" "No," Hermione said gently. "They're remembering us." The air seemed to warm at that. Harry looked up at the Gryffindor banner, red deepened by age, gold threads faintly glowing in the lantern light. He remembered standing beneath it for the first time, small and uncertain, feeling seen in a way he never had before. "They've always moved," Harry said slowly, "always reacted, cheered, shifted." Hermione's gaze moved from banner to banner, and tonight they're still, because they don't need to react anymore. Ron frowned, then slowly nodded. "Because the castle trusts us now." That word, trust, settled into the space like a final piece placed carefully into a puzzle. The banners weren't dormant, they were complete. Hermione stepped forward, her hand hovering near the stone beneath the Ravenclaw banner. She didn't touch it. She didn't need to. Hogwarts isn't rearranging itself to test us, she said. It's adjusting because we're adjusting. Ron exhaled softly. So all this time, the quiet corridors, the still staircases, the calm. Harry finished the thought. The castle was listening. A memory surfaced then, not imposed, but offered. Harry remembered his first night at Hogwarts, lying awake in his dormitory, listening to the wind outside the tower windows. He had thought the castle enormous and unknowable. Now, standing here years later, he understood. Hogwarts had always been enormous because it made room for who you were becoming. The insight unfolded gently, like a story reaching its final, satisfying paragraph. The castle didn't rearrange itself out of chaos. It rearranged itself out of care. Each shifting stair, each softened corridor, each moment of stillness had been a response, not to spells or bravery or cleverness, but to presence, to attention, to the way the students moved through its spaces with respect instead of expectation. Hermione closed her eyes briefly. The founders didn't enchant Hogwarts to control students, she said. They enchanted it to grow with them. Ron smiled faintly. Figures. No one likes being told where to go forever. The banners stirred then, just slightly. Not a dramatic wave, just a subtle ripple like fabric breathing. Harry felt warmth spread through his chest, not excitement, not triumph, but something deeper. Belonging. The castle wasn't asking them to solve a mystery. It was offering reassurance that they had learned enough, that they were allowed to rest. A soft chime echoed through the hall, not a bell, not a warning, just a note, pure and brief, like the final sound of a lullaby. Hermione opened her eyes. "That's it," she said softly. Ron glanced around. "That's it?" "Yes," she replied with a smile. "Understanding doesn't always need more." They stood together a little longer, not wanting to break the moment, but not clinging to it either. Hogwarts didn't demand reverence. It accepted quiet companionship. At last, Harry turned toward the exit. "I think the castle's done rearranging," he said. Ron nodded. "Good. I was starting to feel like I might wake up in the kitchens." Hermione laughed quietly, the sound warm and grounding. As they walked away, the great hall returned to its gentle rhythms. The banners resumed their slow sway, not because they had to, but because movement had become comfortable again. The revelation didn't follow them like a secret. It stayed behind, embedded in stone and silence. Hogwarts had not changed. The students had, and that, the castle seemed to say, was more than enough. The castle did not announce its return to normal. It simply exhaled. After the quiet understanding beneath the banners, Hogwarts seemed to settle into itself, like an old house easing into the deeper hours of night. The corridors softened, the torchlight warmed, even the air felt slower, more patient, as if time itself had decided there was no longer any need to hurry. Harry, Hermione, and Ron walked side by side, their footsteps unhurried, echoing gently along the stone floor. None of them spoke at first. Words felt unnecessary now, like trying to explain a dream while still half inside it. They passed staircases that no longer shifted mid-step. They passed portraits that watched without comment, their painted eyes calm and thoughtful. The suits of armor stood perfectly still, no longer whispering to one another in clinks and creaks. Hogwarts wasn't asleep, but it was resting. Ron broke the silence at last, his voice low and comfortable. You know, I don't think I've ever felt the castle this quiet before. Hermione smiled softly. It's not quiet because something's missing. It's quiet because everything's where it belongs. Harry nodded, feeling that truth settle into him like warmth. The unease he hadn't realized he'd been carrying, the subtle sense that Hogwarts was always one step ahead, always shifting, had faded. The castle felt steady now, grounded in a way that made his shoulders relax. They reached a familiar corridor, one that led back toward the common rooms. The lamps along the walls glowed with a gentler light, as if turned down just enough to encourage rest. Shadows lay where they should, no longer stretching or rearranging themselves. As they walked, Harry noticed something else. The castle sounded different, not silent, but rhythmic. The distant hum of magic moved like a slow heartbeat beneath the stone, a reassuring presence rather than a restless one. It's like, Ron searched for the words, then shrugged, like when you finally lie down after a long day and realize you didn't even notice how tired you were. Hermione glanced at him, fondness in her eyes. That's actually a very good way to put it. They stopped at a junction where their paths would soon split. The moment didn't feel sad. It felt complete. Harry looked around one last time, taking in the curve of the walls, the soft glow of the lanterns, the faint warmth rising from the stone beneath his feet. Hogwarts wasn't watching them leave. It was letting them go. I think the castle trusts us to find our own way now, Harry said quietly. Hermione nodded, and to rest when it's time to rest. Ron stretched his arms lazily. Best lesson it's taught us yet. They shared a small laugh, the sound barely disturbing the stillness, then turned toward their separate towers. The castle didn't shift to guide them. It didn't rearrange a single step. It didn't need to. As Harry climbed the stairs toward Bows's Gryffindor Tower, the familiar creak of wood and stone greeted him. The portrait swung open with its usual mutter, unimpressed but cooperative. Inside, the common room glowed with dying embers and quiet comfort. The fire crackled softly, low and steady. A few students slept in armchairs, books resting open on their laps. Everything was exactly as it should be. Harry paused at the doorway, feeling a deep, gentle calm wash over him. The night's mystery had resolved itself without drama. No hidden chamber remained unsolved, no spell needed undoing. The castle hadn't demanded action, only attention. He realized then that Hogwarts had always been this way. It didn't need constant discovery to be magical. Sometimes, the greatest magic was knowing when to be still. Harry made his way upstairs, each step slower than the last, the stone cool and reassuring beneath his feet. When he finally lay down in his bed, the curtains closed softly around him, muffling the world to a hush. Outside, the banners swayed once, gently. Inside, the castle held its calm, and Hogwarts, content and complete, carried everyone quietly toward sleep. As the night deepened, Hogwarts settled fully into its quiet rhythm, the kind that only comes in the final hours before dawn. The castle no longer shifted or whispered or tested the edges of attention. It simply existed, steady, ancient, and kind in its own silent way. Harry slept easily. The worries of the day loosened their hold, drifting away like mist over the black lake. In his dreams, the corridors stayed where they were meant to be. The banners hung peacefully, their colors warm and familiar. The castle no longer asked to be understood. It was content simply to be felt. Throughout the towers, students breathed in slow, even patterns. Blankets rose and fell. Candles dimmed themselves without fuss. Somewhere far below, a clock ticked gently, not counting moments lost or gained, but keeping a comforting vigil over the night. Hogwarts watched over them all, not with alertness or concern, but with the quiet confidence of a place that has sheltered generations and knows it will shelter many more. Outside, the wind brushed against the towers and moved on. Stars drifted lazily across the sky. Nothing hurried, nothing demanded attention. And if you were there, walking those halls only in memory or listening from far away, you might feel it too, that gentle sense that you are safe, that the world, just for now, has slowed enough to let you rest. There are nights when magic blazes and dazzles, nights when spells crackle and secrets rush to be uncovered. But there are also nights like this one, where magic hums quietly beneath everything, steady and reassuring, asking nothing more than your trust. Tonight was one of those nights. The castle had rearranged itself, not to confuse, but to remember. And once it remembered, it grew still again, holding its stories softly, so no one would wake too suddenly. As sleep draws closer, you can let your thoughts wander through those halls if you like. Picture the warm glow of torchlight on stone, the soft echo of footsteps that fade without urgency, the calm certainty that nothing is chasing you, nothing needs solving, nothing is unfinished. You are exactly where you need to be. The night will pass gently. The castle will remain. And when morning comes, it will arrive in its own time, unrushed, unforced, and kind. Until then, let the quiet carry you, let the magic rest, and drift peacefully into sleep, knowing that Hogwarts is watching over the night, and so are you, in the calmest way of all.